The United Kingdom is sleepwalking into an economic disaster that will make the 2008 financial crisis look like a minor inconvenience. And the most terrifying part is that millions of British families have absolutely no idea what's about to hit them. While politicians argue about small tax changes and the media obsesses over celebrity scandals, a perfect storm of economic forces is gathering strength, ready to devastate household finances across the country. The triple threat of resurging inflation, a collapsing housing market, and mass unemployment isn't some distant possibility anymore. It's happening right now, accelerating faster than even the most pessimistic economists predicted just months ago. What makes this particularly devastating is that the very people who should be protecting us, our government and financial institutions, are actually making the situation worse with policies that seem designed to transfer wealth from ordinary working families to the ultra-wealthy at a pace we've never witnessed before in British history. And before we dive into exactly how bad things are about to get, if you want to stay ahead of these massive economic changes and protect your family's financial future, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Economy Reporter. We're your source for the real UK economic news that mainstream media won't tell you about, delivering the truth about what's really happening to Britain's economy and housing market. Most people have no clue that inflation is already roaring back with a vengeance, hidden behind carefully manipulated statistics that make everything seem fine on the surface. Energy companies are quietly preparing to announce price increases that will add another £1,000 to the average household's annual bills, with wholesale gas prices already up 40% since summer, and electricity costs following the same trajectory. But here's what they're not telling you. Food inflation never actually went away. It just got reclassified and hidden in the data, with supermarket prices for basic essentials like bread, milk and eggs up over 35% compared to just 2 years ago, while wages have barely moved. The service sector, everything from haircuts to car repairs, is experiencing inflation rates above 6% that show no signs of slowing down, meaning every single thing you need to live a normal life is becoming more expensive at a rate that's completely unsustainable. What's even more disturbing is that the Bank of England knows this is happening, but they're trapped. They can't raise interest rates to fight inflation without completely destroying the housing market, and they can't lower them without letting inflation spiral completely out of control. The real inflation rate, the one that actually reflects what families are experiencing at the checkout and when paying bills, is running at close to 9% annually, which means your money is losing nearly a tenth of its value every single year. And this is just the beginning of what's coming. The housing market isn't just in crisis anymore. It's in complete freefall, and the speed of the collapse is accelerating in ways that should terrify anyone who owns property or ever hopes to. Average house prices are now 12 times the average salary in most parts of the country, a ratio that's literally unprecedented in British history and mathematically impossible to sustain. Young people aren't just priced out temporarily. They're facing a future where home ownership is literally impossible unless they inherit property, creating a new feudal system where your birth determines your housing situation for life. The rental market has become a humanitarian disaster, with families spending over 40% of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. And in London and the South East, that figure rises to over 60% for many workers. But here's the truly catastrophic part. We're witnessing the largest exodus of landlords in British history, with over 300,000 rental properties being sold off in the last 18 months alone, creating a shortage that's driving rents even higher while simultaneously reducing options for tenants. The government's response has been to make things worse, introducing new regulations and taxes that are accelerating the landlord exodus while doing nothing to increase the housing supply. What nobody's talking about is that we're heading for a situation where millions of people will have nowhere to live that they can afford, creating a homelessness crisis that will make the current situation look mild by comparison. And when you combine this with what's happening in the job market, the picture becomes even darker. The employment statistics you see on the news are complete fiction, carefully crafted to hide an unemployment crisis that's already destroying millions of lives across Britain. Sure, the official unemployment rate looks low, but that's only because they don't count the 3.7 million people trapped in zero-hour contracts with no guaranteed income, no security, and no ability to plan their lives. The gig economy isn't providing flexibility and opportunity like they claimed. It's creating a new underclass of workers who are technically employed but can't afford to live, surviving on irregular income that can disappear at a moment's notice. Artificial intelligence is eliminating middle-income jobs at a pace that nobody anticipated, with entire departments in banks, insurance companies, and even hospitals being replaced by software in real time. Recent graduates are facing the worst job market in generations, with 67% working in jobs that don't require a degree while carrying student debt that will take decades to repay if they ever can. The public sector, traditionally a source of stable employment for millions, is preparing for cuts that will eliminate up to 500,000 jobs over the next 2 years as the government desperately tries to balance budgets that are spiralling out of control. Manufacturing jobs continue to vanish as companies move operations overseas or shut down entirely. Unable to compete in a global market where Britain has lost almost every advantage it once had. What makes this particularly devastating is that the jobs being created to replace those being lost pay significantly less, offer no security, and provide no path to building a stable middle-class life. While all this destruction unfolds, there's a silent wealth destroyer working in the background that's obliterating the life savings of millions of British families who think they're being responsible. The government and banks are colluding in a massive theft through negative real interest rates, where the interest you earn on savings is so far below inflation that you're literally losing money every day you keep it in the bank. They're planning to slash ISA limits from £20,000 to £10,000, destroying one of the last tax-efficient ways ordinary people could build wealth for their future. The freeze on tax allowances is a stealth tax that's dragging millions into higher tax brackets without earning a penny more in real terms, effectively giving the government a pay rise at your expense every single year. Your pension, that nest egg you've been carefully building for decades, is being systematically destroyed through a combination of inflation, market manipulation, and regulatory changes that guarantee you'll retire poorer than your parents. The state pension age keeps rising while the value keeps falling, creating a generation of people who will work until they die because retirement has become financially impossible. Even premium bonds and other safe government-backed savings schemes are offering returns so pathetic that you're guaranteed to lose purchasing power over time. This isn't incompetence or bad luck. It's a deliberate policy designed to force people to spend rather than save, keeping the consumer economy limping along while destroying any chance of building long-term financial security. What we're witnessing isn't just an economic crisis, it's the largest transfer of wealth from the middle and working classes to the ultra-wealthy in British history, and it's happening right in front of our eyes. The generational wealth gap has exploded to levels that would have been considered impossible just a decade ago, with over 60s controlling 78% of all wealth while under 40s own less than 4%. This isn't because older generations worked harder or saved more. It's because they benefited from affordable housing, free education, and genuine wage growth that has been systematically denied to everyone who came after. The middle class isn't struggling. It's being deliberately eliminated, crushed between rising costs and stagnant wages until they fall into the expanding pool of working poor. Government policies aren't failing to address this. They're actively accelerating it, with every budget and policy announcement designed to protect asset values for the wealthy while extracting maximum value from everyone else. Property owners are seeing their wealth increase by more each year than most people earn in a lifetime of work, creating a two-tier society where your economic fate is determined entirely by whether you own assets or work for wages. The stock market reaches new highs while real wages fall, benefiting the small percentage of the population with significant investments while everyone else gets poorer. This isn't a conspiracy theory, it's documented in the government's own statistics, hidden in plain sight for anyone willing to look past the headlines and examine what's really happening. The year 2025 is shaping up to be an economic bloodbath that will fundamentally reshape British society, and the warning signs are everywhere for those paying attention. Tax increases already confirmed for April will extract an additional £47 billion from household budgets that are already stretched to breaking point, with national insurance, council tax and stealth taxes all rising simultaneously. Public services are being gutted behind the scenes, with the NHS preparing to cut services that people have relied on for generations, while education budgets face real terms cuts of 15% over the next 3 years. The pound is showing signs of serious weakness against major currencies, setting the stage for a devaluation that could trigger an inflationary spiral reminiscent of the 1970s, but potentially much worse. International investors are quietly pulling money out of Britain at the fastest rate since the Brexit referendum, sensing that the economic fundamentals are deteriorating beyond repair. The commercial property market is collapsing even faster than residential, with office values down 35% and retail properties becoming literally unsellable as businesses fail at record rates. Energy blackouts are being seriously discussed at government level for the first time since the 1970s, as our creaking infrastructure struggles to cope with demand it can no longer meet. Major corporations are accelerating their exodus from Britain, taking jobs, tax revenue and economic activity with them to more stable countries that offer better prospects for growth. The convergence of all these factors isn't just creating a recession, it's engineering a complete transformation of British society into something unrecognisable from what previous generations built and enjoyed. The social contract that promised if you worked hard, saved money, and played by the rules you could build a decent life has been shattered beyond repair. We're entering an era where a small elite will control virtually everything while the vast majority struggle just to survive, dependent on government support that becomes increasingly inadequate and conditional. The Britain your children will inherit won't be the land of opportunity and fairness that once defined our national character. It will be a place where your birth circumstances determine your entire life trajectory with almost no possibility of improvement. The housing crisis, employment catastrophe, and savings destruction we're seeing now are just the opening acts of a much larger economic tragedy that will play out over the coming years. There are ways to protect yourself, investing in hard assets, developing multiple income streams, and potentially looking at opportunities outside the UK. But the window for taking action is closing rapidly. The most important thing you can do right now is stay informed about what's really happening. Not the sanitized version presented by mainstream media, but the harsh reality that will determine your family's future. If you want to stay ahead of these massive changes and get the real story about Britain's economic collapse as it unfolds, make sure you've subscribed to Economy Reporter and hit that notification bell. Because when the real crisis hits, and it will hit soon, being informed won't just be helpful. It might be the difference between surviving and losing everything.